he led this insurrection. He said, you have asked me to give a history of the motives that induced me to undertake the late insurrection as you call it. Notice he said, as you call it? That means that's not what he calls it. What does he call it? A demonstration. What does Moses do when he goes to the great house? He demonstrates, great house means Pharaoh, he demonstrates the power of God. He demonstrates the curses. This is what's going to happen, Pharaoh, if you don't set the captives free. Nat Turner does not go out and kill white people. He kills slaveholders. Slaveholders. This is a demonstration. Now, I want to also point out that Nat Turner's demonstration was in Southampton County, Virginia. In Southampton County, Virginia, if he was captured, and he was, if he was executed, and he was, he would be executed in Jerusalem. That was the county seat of Southampton County, Virginia. Nat Turner was hung in Jerusalem. He sacrificed his life in Jerusalem, just like Jesus. Now I want you to appreciate, because his name is Turner, and it's very common that we tell you to turn away from sin. Now turn away from sin. Brother, won't you turn away? Sister, won't you turn away? Turn away from sin. Our Savior, he got hung down in Jerusalem that you might turn away from sin. Oh, won't you turn away from sin. Our martyr, he got hung down in Jerusalem that you might turn away from sin. That sin is slavery. Nat Turner is an example. He's a soldier. He's leading by example. And just like Jesus, he would live on in the memory of the people. Nat Turner was a champion. He did not lead an insurrection. He led a demonstration. Now, in America's African descent community, organizations had to be secret. You couldn't come out and tell people what you were really up to. Now, sometimes these secrets fool us today. We get confused. There's a meeting in Cleveland in 1854 by a number of these champions, like William Lambert, he's there, William Howard Day, Martin Delany, Jordan Noble, men who are actually outspoken opponents of immigration. They called their meeting the Negro Immigration Convention. And they tell all the planters, we're interested in becoming exiles. We're going to leave the United States. Well, you know, the planters, that's what they wanted to do with free people they thought was a problem. That's why they financed the American Colonization Society. So what did these intelligent African Americans do? They told the planters, we're interested in immigration. So they hold a convention on immigration. And eventually, they would move their headquarters to Chatham, Canada, about 50 miles across the river from here. Only 50 miles. Now, if we really want to know what they were up to in this convention, I recommend we go to them and ask them. By asking them what was their declaration of sentiments. They say in Declaration number 12, the one, you can't see it on there. Declaration number 12 says that as men and equals, we demand every political right, privilege, and position to which whites are eligible in the United States. In the United States. What are they up to? They're up to gaining their rights as citizens in the United States. However, they presented to us as an immigration convention. Martin Delany is often described as somebody who was wanting to exile himself. He never exiled himself. That ought to be the clue that he really didn't want to exile himself. But one of the most important statements in his book, The Condition, Elevation, Immigration, and Destiny of the Colored People in the United States, in 1852, he actually tells us that our citizenship in the United States is a birthright. He calls it a birthright citizenship. Sounds like what happens in the 14th Amendment, didn't it? He calls it a birthright citizenship. You really believe he's going to give up his birthright citizenship? No, he tells you that he's not. He says that they can come up with these unjust laws and create and obstruct it, but they can never annul it. It can never be annulled. These are champions who are leading by example. However, it will confuse you you examine them from the perspective of the planter. When they go to Chatham, Canada, again, look at that, not very far. This is a military compound. This is a military compound. William Steele would write in his book on Underground Railroad, talking about Abraham Galloway. Abraham Galloway becomes one of the most important spies in the Civil War. In fact, he is probably the most important spy in American history. Abraham Galloway allied himself faithfully to John Bull. Who is John Bull? John Bull is the British equivalent to Uncle Sam. In Chatham, Canada, they're getting military training. In fact, when you read William Steele, every time a physically fit specimen, somebody who does well at the NFL Combine, every time one of them comes through, William Steele says he's a specimen for John Bull. Saying what? He's a specimen for military training. They're getting professional military training in Chatham, Canada West. So they are highly competent. Now, John Brown, as we know, he comes here, talks to William Lambert. He has meetings here, and then he heads up to Chatham. He meets with William Howard Day. He meets with Martin Delany, and he holds a meeting because he's going to recruit them to go on his mission. But I want you to appreciate that John Brown had done what? He wrote his own Constitution. Wrote his own Constitution. He didn't say we're going to do this in league with the Constitution of the United States. He wrote his own Constitution. So he goes up and explains his plan. When he explains his plan to Day and Delany, Delany tells members of the organization, we're not going to, the leadership's not going to follow. Anybody in high leadership, you're not going to follow. John Brown gets angry. He's angry at Delany, and he calls Martin Delany a coward. Delany replies, Captain Brown does not know the man of whom he speaks. There exists no one in whose veins the blood of cowardice flows less freely, and it must not be said even by John Brown. Close quote. Captain Brown? Captain Brown. Captains don't write their own constitutions. Captains don't lead you on strategic operations. Captains lead tactical operations. He's putting John Brown in his proper place. If you read Frederick Douglass, he calls John Brown Captain Brown. Harriet Tubman calls him Captain Brown. Mary Ann Shedd Terry calls him Captain Brown. They're putting him in his proper place. Now, I don't think that it's an insult to call somebody a captain. I was a captain in the Marine Corps. But I know that I don't lead generals because I'm a captain. Captain Brown. They've got a plan of their own. However, they value John Brown. Why? Because his raid can be a catalyst. When you read William Lambert, that's what he's saying. He's saying that this was a catalyst. He's not saying it's because John Brown's plan for a new constitution was good. He's saying it's because he was a catalyst. So they value John Brown because he's a catalyst, because they have a plan. They have a plan. So when John Brown's raid is being conducted, they do make sure you can't associate many of them with them. So they find themselves in places that you can't even associate themselves with Harper's Ferry. William Howard Day and Henry Highland Garnett, they're in England. They're touring, and they're trying to convince folk not to, British folk, not to purchase textile goods from textile industries that buy Southern cotton, the boycott. That's what they're encouraging. Now also they have formed the African Civilization Society, and I won't go into many details of that society. However, most of the time when people deal with the African Civilization Society, they actually think that it's the same as the American Colonization Society. But if you really want to know the truth about it, who you go to is Sir Thomas Buxton, a member of Parliament in the 1820s and 30s that actually drafts that legislation that abolishes slavery in the British realm. And Buxton would be the person that would establish the African Civilization Society in England in 1840, in which he would later write that if you think they're the same as the American colonization, that's a mistake. Because they do not have the same objective. They do not seek to colonize in Africa. They seek to go to Africa to convince Africans to stop selling Africans into slavery. And with Delany and the rest, they want to teach the Africans there's other produce, like cotton, that they could sell to the European markets instead of human beings. Not the same as the American Colonization Society. though many people confuse it. Now, also, while this is all happening, Delaney, guess where he is? He's in Africa. Taking a tour down the Niger River Valley, trying to find land that's conducive to growing what? Cotton. Creating an alternative. These are very sophisticated folk. They were forward-looking. They see that a civil war is coming. Also, while Delaney is doing that, there's a book. Actually, today it's a book. It's a novel called Blake of the Huts of America. At that time, it was a serial that appeared in the Anglo-African magazine, an AME Zion journal, if you will, out of New York City, edited by Robert Hamilton. It's an organ of this secret society. And this serial, that now called the novel Blake of the Huts of America, it's a code book. If you read Delaney in the North Star, in April of 1849, he told you that when he tells you that they are getting ready to annex Cuba or make moves on Cuba, then it's time to stand ready. And he said, who's going to stand ready? The elevated freemen, those who don't accept another man as their master. Stand ready, strike a blow for liberty. And in his first chapter of the book, guess what he does? He talks about them planning to annex Cuba. Then he says in it, what is he doing? I now impart to you the secret. It is this: I have laid a scheme and matured a plan for a general insurrection of the slaves in every state and the successful overthrow of slavery. And if you follow him through this book, you will learn a lot. You'll learn this whole definition. Like when Henry Blake Protagonist is running away, he tells his mother-in-law that he's going to run away, and she tells him, no, Henry, don't run away. Then he explains to her that he's not going to allow them to subdue his free spirit, and I'm paraphrasing him. She says, Lord of mercy, Henry, you was a free man. How come you didn't tell me that long ago? You need to run away. She had known him for 18 years, but he never told her that he would not let any man subdue his free spirit, so she didn't know. He never shared the code. She didn't know he was an elevated freeman that didn't accept that another man was his master. Now she's saying you need to run away. Also in there, Delaney is giving a prescription for finding leadership. He says it's man or woman, the best person for the job. If you're trying to win, you need to get the best person for the job. This is not a chauvinist organization. Also, he introduced the concept of gospel talk, where he talks about flipping the scriptures. Or let's say he, not introduces because it's been introduced long before this. He actually shares with us the concept of gospel talk. Also, he teaches patience, waiting for the proper signs before you make your move. And those proper signs would deal with the Civil War. African Americans are forecasting the Civil War before it begins. John S. Rock was an 1852 graduate of the American Medical College in Philadelphia. Dr. Rock was a physician, a dentist, a school teacher, and the first African American lawyer to be admitted to the bar of the U.S. Supreme Court. Dr. Rock gave a speech in Boston on March 5th, 1858. The occasion was the anniversary of the Boston Massacre, March 5th, 1770. Crispus Attucks, a man of African descent, was the first to lose his life in what became the American Revolution. I would like you to take note of the fact that Dr. Rock's speech was delivered 3 years, 1 month, and 8 days before the Civil War begins. And Dr. Rock said, and I quote, "Sooner or later the clashing of arms will be heard in this country, and the black man's services will be needed. 150,000 freemen capable of bearing arms, and not all cowards and fools, and 750,000 slaves, wild with enthusiasm caused by the dawn of the glorious opportunity of being able to strike a genuine blow for freedom, will be a power which the white man will be bound to respect. Will the blacks fight? Of course they will." Close quote. 3 years before the Civil War begins. It is very clear evidence that African Americans know the war is coming and they are preparing for a civil war. That is why, when open hostilities began in April of 1861 with the firing on Fort Sumter, Charleston Harbor, South Carolina, Allen Pinkerton took note of the fact that African Americans had banded themselves together to further the cause of freedom. They stood ready. However, it was not legal for them to join the army. When the war begins, Congress and Abraham Lincoln affirms the congressional, what Congress says. Congress says this war is a war to preserve the Union, not a war to end slavery. The Legal League wants it to be a war to end slavery. Pinkerton knows they've stood ready to further the cause of freedom, but that is not the objective. So when Lincoln is calling up troops, it's not legal for African Americans to join the army, and there's no movement in Congress for get them to change the laws. So this is what they would refer to as, quote, a white man's war.